Do you ever get the feeling that something in your life is not fully settled, like there is an empty space inside you that nothing quite seems to satisfy? As if you have been moving through connections, searching for love, but somehow always ending up with the sense that something deeper is still missing. Maybe past experiences left marks on you, maybe disappointment slowly made you lower your expectations, or maybe you stopped believing that someone could truly see you, accept you, and stay. If any of this feels familiar, there is something important to understand about human psychology. The strongest emotional bonds are not created through words alone. They begin long before anything is clearly expressed. Often, two people start feeling each other's emotional presence before they even realize what is happening consciously. And in your case, there is already someone whose emotions toward you are not as simple or surface level as they appear. There is a person who has been quietly carrying feelings that go beyond casual interest. What they feel is not new or temporary. It has been forming slowly over time, built through moments they did not fully understand in the beginning. And now, whether they admit it or not, you have started to take up space in their imagination in a way that feels more serious than they expected. At some point, they began picturing a future that includes you. Not as a passing thought, but as something stable, something real, a connection built on emotional safety, trust, and calm understanding rather than excitement alone. You stand out to them in a way they cannot easily explain because they notice the subtle things others tend to overlook. The way you stay kind even after being let down. The way you carry your strength quietly without needing attention for it. The way your expression changes when you genuinely care. The way you keep going even when life feels heavy. Psychology often explains that emotional attachment grows strongest where people feel safe to be themselves. And somewhere along the way, your presence began to represent that feeling for them. Without loud moments or dramatic shifts, you became associated with comfort. Their mind started linking you with emotional ease, even before they consciously recognized it. That is how real attachment usually develops. Not in sudden intensity, but in consistency, in familiarity, in the feeling of being understood without effort. Over time, you became part of their emotional world in a quiet but meaningful way. This person may already be within your life. It could be someone who has known you for a while but never expressed what they truly feel. Someone who held back because of uncertainty, fear of rejection, or fear of disrupting what already exists. Or it could be someone newer whose presence feels strangely familiar, as if the connection makes sense on a deeper level from the very beginning. What is becoming clearer inside them is this: you no longer feel temporary. And once someone starts seeing another person as emotionally significant, their mind naturally begins to imagine continuity. Everyday life scenarios start forming in their thoughts without effort: simple conversations, shared routines, quiet support during difficult moments, and a sense of building something steady instead of uncertain. This is what makes the connection different. It is not only attraction, it is emotional pull mixed with something deeper that they struggle to define. Human beings are naturally drawn to emotional safety, people who allow them to feel seen without judgment, heard without performance, and accepted without having to constantly explain themselves. When that kind of connection appears, it leaves a lasting imprint. That is why you stay in their thoughts longer than expected. Why your absence feels noticeable. Why moments involving you replay in their mind without warning. You have become emotionally relevant to them in a way that is not easily turned off. At night, their thoughts often drift back to you. They replay conversations, small interactions, and moments they did not fully appreciate at the time. They wonder if you sense what is unspoken between you. They imagine what it would feel like to finally stop holding back. But alongside these feelings, there is hesitation, because real emotional connection also brings vulnerability. The deeper someone feels, the more they become aware of what they could lose, and that awareness creates caution. It makes them more reserved, more thoughtful, sometimes even distant at moments when they actually care more than ever. There is another layer to this connection as well. You represent something calm in their emotional world. Not chaos, not confusion, not unpredictability, just peace. And for someone who may have experienced emotional instability before, that kind of presence becomes deeply grounding. The nervous system begins to associate you with safety, and that association grows stronger over time. Maybe you, too, have grown tired of connections that never fully became real. Maybe you reached a point where you stopped expecting consistency because disappointment felt more familiar than stability. But this connection carries a different emotional tone. It is not driven by entertainment or temporary attention. It is driven by the search for something meaningful and lasting. And slowly, without forcing it, this person has begun to link that sense of belonging with you. That is why even silence between you can feel charged, why eye contact can feel heavier than expected, why ordinary moments begin to feel emotionally significant. Most of what happens in connection is never spoken directly. It happens in energy, attention, and subtle emotional shifts long before words catch up. Interestingly, the more someone tries to suppress feelings like this, the more present they become internally. When thoughts return repeatedly to a person who brings emotional comfort, the mind strengthens that attachment instead of weakening it. What is resisted often becomes more noticeable. And that is exactly what has been happening here. They are no longer just curious about you. They are emotionally invested in ways they did not plan for. Your presence affects their mood. Your attention shifts their energy. Your silence makes them reflect more than they expected. And this level of emotional influence is not something they can easily ignore anymore. Over time, internal resistance starts to weaken. What remains is the growing realization that this connection has weight. It matters. And pretending otherwise becomes harder. There are moments when they appear conflicted, close one day, distant the next, not because their feelings disappear, but because they are trying to manage emotions that feel too intense to process all at once. When someone begins to care deeply, every interaction carries more meaning and every possibility of loss feels sharper. But emotional truth has a way of building pressure when it is unspoken for too long. Eventually, something shifts. Either it is expressed or it becomes too heavy to hold inside. And now they are approaching that point quietly, because deep down, they already know something they have not fully admitted yet. You are no longer just someone they think about occasionally. You have become part of their emotional landscape, and that changes how they see the future. What once felt casual is slowly turning into something they want to be stable, real, and lasting. Not temporary connection, but something that grows with time. Real connection changes people in ways they do not immediately notice. It reshapes how they think, how they respond, what they start valuing, and even what they begin to imagine for their future. And in their case, that change has already started happening quietly from within. But there is still one emotion they have not fully overcome yet: fear. Not the fear of getting hurt in the usual sense, but something more specific. The fear that you might not feel the same way. Because as their emotions deepen, the stakes inside their mind become higher. It is no longer just about liking you or risking rejection. It has turned into something more delicate, the fear of losing the possibility of you altogether. That is what keeps them careful. It is what makes them pause before certain messages, overthink simple interactions, and quietly observe your reactions more closely than before. They are not doing it randomly. When someone starts developing real emotional attachment, they naturally begin searching for signs of safety before they reveal what they feel. And recently, something subtle seems to have shifted for them. A moment, a reaction, a small change in your energy that they interpreted as encouragement or at least emotional openness. It may not have looked significant from the outside, but internally, it created something powerful: hope. Because in psychology, hope is the turning point. The moment hope enters, fear stops being the dominant force. If you believe emotional connection is stronger than temporary attraction, write 333 below. That moment they experienced did not look dramatic at all. There were no big confessions or obvious signs, nothing that would seem important to anyone else. But emotionally, it stayed with them longer than expected. And that is often how deep attachment begins, not through intensity, but through meaning attached to small, ordinary experiences. It could have been the way you looked at them during a quiet exchange, or how easily you understood something they struggled to explain. or simply the sense of calm they felt in your presence, something they did not have to force or question. After that moment, a question started repeating in their mind, one they could not ignore anymore. What if this is real? Not imagined, not one-sided, not temporary, real. And once that question takes root, it does not leave easily. Psychologically, the mind always looks for emotional patterns before accepting vulnerability. It searches for consistency, safety, and reciprocity. And slowly, your behavior started giving them something to hold on to. The way conversations with you feel natural. The way silence does not feel uncomfortable. The way emotional depth seems to exist without effort. That is what slowly shifted fear into hope. And hope changes everything. Because when someone begins to believe their feelings might be returned, emotional defenses start to weaken. The inner walls they built over time begin to lose strength without them even noticing. Now they find themselves imagining things they never planned to imagine. Simple future moments, everyday scenarios, walking beside you, talking about life casually, sharing time without hesitation, building something steady instead of uncertain. That shift is not small. It is psychological evidence of emotional attachment becoming real. You are no longer just someone they notice. You are someone they include in their inner world, and that realization has made everything more intense for them. Because now the connection feels two-sided in possibility, even if nothing has been openly confirmed. They are no longer only thinking about their feelings, they are wondering about yours too. That uncertainty keeps them awake at times, replaying conversations, reading meaning into your tone, trying to understand whether what they feel is visible to you as well. And the truth is, emotional chemistry is rarely one-sided in perception. People naturally mirror each other when connection is genuine. Attention becomes sharper. Eye contact lingers longer. Silence feels different. Presence becomes more noticeable. They have started noticing these shifts with you, and it has affected them deeply. Even when they try to distract themselves, their thoughts return to you. A song reminds them. A quiet moment brings you back into focus. An ordinary pause in the day suddenly feels connected to you for no clear reason. Psychology describes this as emotional salience. When someone becomes emotionally significant, the mind prioritizes them automatically. Their presence is no longer optional in thought, it becomes recurring. And that is exactly what is happening here. Your presence now carries emotional weight for them. That is also why their behavior may seem different lately. More careful, more thoughtful, more internally controlled. Not because they feel less, but because they are feeling more than they can easily express. There have been moments when they almost said everything, when the truth felt close enough to surface, but hesitation stopped it. Not because the feeling is unclear, actually the opposite. It is because the feeling has become too clear and therefore too important. When someone realizes how deeply another person affects their emotional state, their sense of control feels fragile. Every interaction starts to matter more. Every possible outcome feels more serious. Every risk feels heavier. That is where they are now, and one of the strongest turning points came when they briefly imagined losing you entirely. That thought alone created an emotional reaction they did not expect, because it revealed something they had been avoiding admitting. This connection is no longer optional in their emotional world. Loss suddenly felt real. And psychology shows that we often understand attachment most clearly through the fear of losing it. That realization changed everything. Now, instead of questioning whether they care, they are questioning what happens if they stay silent too long. That is what is pushing them closer to honesty. Because pretending this is casual is becoming harder each day. You have already changed something in them. You made them believe in emotional stability again. You made them consider connection without chaos. You made them think about something deeper than temporary attraction. And those kinds of emotional shifts do not reverse easily once they settle. Even others around them may begin noticing it. A difference in tone, a more reflective presence, a quieter seriousness in the way they carry themselves. That often happens when someone is emotionally preparing for something meaningful. Without fully realizing it, they are moving toward emotional availability. And now, the most important realization is forming inside them. This is not just attraction anymore. It feels like compatibility, like peace, like something that could actually last if it is allowed to grow properly. That is why their thoughts have started shifting from what this feels like to what this could become. And for the first time, that idea does not feel unrealistic to them. It feels possible, even serious. But before anything is expressed openly, one final internal fear still needs to settle. The fear of risking everything for something they cannot fully control yet. And once that final resistance breaks, silence may not remain an option anymore. They are starting to imagine a future they once avoided completely. A future built not on emotional intensity or uncertainty, but on stability, calm, and a sense of peace that comes from being emotionally grounded with someone. And the surprising part is that every version of that future seems to lead back to you. That realization has started to feel overwhelming for them because the fear inside them has shifted. It is no longer simply, "What if I get hurt?" It has become something deeper and more unsettling. What if I lose the chance to experience something real just because I stayed silent too long? That thought has been quietly following them, especially in the stillness of the night. In those moments when there is nothing left to distract the mind, they begin imagining a reality where you move forward, emotionally distant, never fully knowing what was left unspoken. And that possibility creates a kind of anxiety they did not expect to feel so strongly. Because for the first time, they are becoming aware of the cost of hesitation. Psychology often explains that emotional silence is usually maintained for two main reasons: fear of rejection and fear of emotional change. In this case, both are present, because if they speak honestly, everything changes. The comfort of uncertainty disappears. The emotional risk becomes real and visible. But remaining silent is also becoming increasingly difficult to tolerate. And you may already be sensing this shift. Maybe their attention feels more focused than before. Maybe their presence around you feels more emotionally loaded. Maybe you notice pauses in conversation that feel like unspoken meaning sitting just beneath the surface. That is not imagination. That is emotional pressure trying to find expression. They are no longer able to treat your impact as something small or casual, because your presence has already changed something fundamental inside them. You have influenced the way they think about love itself. They are beginning to value emotional depth over emotional chaos, consistency over excitement, peace over unpredictability. That kind of shift does not happen often, and once it begins, it is difficult to reverse. Recently, someone close to them may have even noticed the change. A subtle difference in their behavior, their focus, their emotional tone. And when asked about it, they could not fully hide it anymore. They may not have said your name directly, but the truth behind their words was obvious. Someone has entered their life who makes them feel differently about love. Someone who feels emotionally safe. Someone who brings out a version of them that wants to be more open, more honest, more emotionally aware. Even without direct confession, the change is visible, because real emotional attachment changes how a person carries themselves. It shifts their energy in ways others can sense before words are ever spoken. Now, this connection is no longer something they can label as temporary interest. It is becoming emotionally serious in their internal world, and the deeper it grows, the harder silence becomes to maintain. There are moments when they almost let the truth slip. Moments when vulnerability comes close to expression, but fear still steps in at the last second. Not because they doubt what they feel, but because they understand what they feel has become too important to risk easily. That is the paradox of deep attachment. The more someone matters, the more carefully we protect the possibility of losing them. Still, something inside them is beginning to break that pattern. They are slowly realizing that no amount of emotional protection is worth missing the chance at something that feels real. That thought alone has started changing how they see everything. Emotional control is no longer as important as emotional honesty, and once that shift happens internally, silence begins to lose its power. Because now, it does not feel like safety anymore. It feels like avoidance. They have started imagining outcomes they never seriously considered before. A real future with you. Stability instead of uncertainty. emotional closeness instead of distance, a connection built on trust rather than guessing. And the more they imagine it, the more natural it begins to feel. Without planning it, you have become part of their future thinking, and that changes everything. Because now, their emotions are no longer one-directional. It is not only about what they feel, it is also about what they believe might exist between you. That possibility has made everything more intense, more sensitive, more emotionally charged. Even small interactions feel different now. A glance feels longer, a silence feels heavier. A simple conversation carries more meaning than it used to, not because the situation has changed externally, but because their internal emotional state has changed completely. Psychology refers to this as emotional salience. When someone becomes emotionally significant, the brain begins to prioritize them automatically. Thoughts return to them without effort. Attention is drawn to them unconsciously. Even unrelated moments begin to connect back to them emotionally. That is what is happening here, and it explains why they cannot stop thinking about you. Your presence now lingers in their thoughts even when you are not around. Your words replay later. Your expressions stay with them longer than expected. Even your silence has meaning in their mind. At this point, they are no longer questioning whether they care. They already know they do. Now they are questioning what happens if they stay silent too long. That question is what is pushing them closer to emotional honesty every day. Because internally, the resistance is becoming harder to maintain. They are tired of pretending they feel less than they actually do. Tired of acting unaffected. Tired of carrying emotions that continue growing despite their attempts to control them. And recently, a simple imagined scenario changed something in them completely. They pictured life continuing exactly as it is now. No confession, no clarity, just silence and emotional distance. And then they imagined you eventually moving on without ever knowing how deeply they felt. That thought created something immediate and uncomfortable: regret. And regret is one of the strongest emotional motivators a person can experience because it forces clarity. It reveals what truly matters beneath hesitation. They began to understand something important. If this connection is real and it feels real to them, then silence could cost them something they may never get again. And that realization is no longer easy to ignore, because you have not only affected their emotions, you have changed their emotional direction entirely. You made them reconsider what love should feel like. You made them question emotional distance. You made them value connection in a way they did not before. Now, even the idea of losing this possibility feels heavier than the fear of expressing it, and that is where they are beginning to shift. From avoidance toward honesty, from silence toward truth, from uncertainty toward emotional risk that finally feels worth taking. Because deep down, they already understand something they have not said aloud yet. You are no longer just someone in their life. You are becoming someone they cannot imagine their emotional future without. And once that realization fully settles, silence stops being an option. Jungian love.